You found the skeleton. How would you tell people that is you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, everybody, welcome to Kent with Bent 51, the Hoven Bowl. Yay! So this title was actually partially inspired by the fact that I was at the grocery store and I saw a sign that said Super Bowl. It looked like 54, and I was thinking, I thought it was 55. And then Bent, you saw it, and you said, I think it's 55, but let me check. And it's because they put.
But there's well, you can describe it if you want.
Well, they put the trophy in between the L and the V, and it made it look like a 1.
It looked like an I.
Yeah.
Right. L.
Yeah. So anyway, that was just we decided to mimic that for our 51st because we can't wait too long afterwards. Like if we waited till 55, it would be too much time. So but anyway. Let's see. Before we jump in, there is one more thing I want to mention, and it is some of you and someone tried to get him fired over his performance in the Kent Hovind debate recently. He got called down to HR, and someone had submitted a complaint about his rude and offensive debate. And so I'm thinking about making a little video about examples of creationists being fragile little snowflakes who can't take a little bit of criticism, because they like to call people that. Well, some of them, not all of them. But apparently they can dish it, but they can't take it. So I'm going to make fun of a few of them, hopefully. I'm going to see if I have a few people who I know have collected such things. We're going to talk about when someone tried to basically ruin Bill Ludlow's business because he'd embarrassed Kent Hovind. We'll talk about this, talk about a few other things, so that might be fun. It'll probably be a shorter video. But let's see. I'm not sure which video I'm releasing Thursday. Probably one about jungle jargon, because he made a video in response to me, but we'll talk about that later. So, we are here with the CSE 101 Class 5 video. We were just talking about Jupiter and Saturn are releasing more energy into the solar system than they get from the sun. So Kent Hovind seems to think that, for some reason, this is a problem, even though he hasn't bothered to give any math on that. So, Bent, I guess now we go over the rules, huh?
Yes, sir, we do.
All right. So, we have rules, and you're not encouraged to follow these. You may if you would like. So, the rules are, first, we take a drink whenever Kent Hovind gets something right. I'm sorry, you might be able to hear cars from outside, but anyway, whenever Kent Hovind gets something right, and it's not just a quotation from someone else, we take a drink. Whenever he says something that's just so stupid we have to take a drink for our own mental sanity, take a drink. Let's see. Whenever Kent Hovind tells a joke and it falls flat, take a drink. Is that it? I forget. Oh, we're forgetting Godzilla.
There's another one, yeah.
There it is, Godzilla. All right, so we take a drink for Godzilla. So
It also includes in super chats, sounds and super chats.
Yes, so super chats that involve a Godzilla emoji also can trigger that. So that is also a thing. And let's see, I think that's it. So we can get going pretty soon. But I do need to close sound something. And all right, now we should be ready. All right, so Bent, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, I'm ready too. Here we go.
They're losing heat. You can see the reference here. Reference number 5, page 26. That would be from Edward Blick's book, Scientific Analysis of Genesis. Also, reference number 4, page 43. That would be from Ackerman's book, It's a Young World After All.
I want there to be a ride with that as the song. Like at the Ark Park or something? At the Ark Encounter? Oh, Mothra. Interestingly, that That I might have to respond to at some point. Here we go.
Anyway, the way this works in the seminar notebook is so that you can look up the reference and the page number. It's kind of written right in here. It's a little different way to footnote, I know, but it's very fast and efficient. That's the way I use. It's not probably the standard way, which I very seldom have cared what the standard way is for anything. So, right, Dan? That's true.
Yeah.
So the reference.
And we have for $2.99 reduced from Ian Chen. I'll contribute to that video, Daps. Well, I will then ask for your help with it. Because, yeah, if you want to tell your story, like, on camera or something, I'm more than happy to put that in as a clip.
Is here. That's how it works with your notebook. Jupiter has a little moon called Ganymede. It's not really that little. It's about the same size as the planet Mercury. So,
I mean, compared to Earth, that's little, but compared to other moons, I guess it's pretty big. Actually, I think that makes it the biggest moon, so yeah, fair enough.
This Ganymede is one of the, I don't know how many there are now, maybe 20 moons around Jupiter. It's a lot. One of the moons, called Ganymede, is, as one of the Voyager's space probes went through it, the Jupiter probe, said there's...
Went through Ganymede? I think that was a misspeak, or do you think that he thinks that the Voyager 2 was doing some litho breaking?
I doubt that. I mean, I didn't design it, so no, I don't think there's a lot of that going on.
Okay.
Very strong magnetic field. And all they can figure is a magnetic field has to be produced by the inside core being hot. And to have something that small be that hot, when it's that far away from the sun, is surprising. A smaller body cools off faster than a larger body.
Kent got something right. Take a drink. That was indeed accurate.
The reason for that is, without going too far down this rabbit hole, your surface area increases in proportion to your volume as you decrease in size. Did we erase all that from last time?
That is also correct, yeah. I'll take a drink.
Okay, if you have a little cube that is 1 inch, 1 by 1 by 1, 1 inch cube, it has 1 cubic inch of volume. 1 cubic inch. The surface area, how many square inches of surface would it take to build that cube?
6 square inches.
6. It has 6
I
square
got it right.
inches of surface area.
I'm going to wait till we finish. I'm not going to drink for every single true statement Kent says right here.
Is 1 to 6, right? Now let's make our cube twice as big. 2 inches by 2 inches by 2 inches. What's the volume?
Or
2 times 2 times 2 is 8.
That was 8. I'm bad at this.
What's our surface area? 4 on each side. There are 6 sides. 24. What's our ratio? 1 to 3. See what happens?
I don't know what he's trying to do here, other than
he's showing that the ratio,
a little slowly,
as you increase in size, the ratio of volume to surface area gets smaller. It is true. And
sure,
the higher
why he's trying to show that.
Oh, because he's saying that the smaller a body is, the more surface area it has per
so he's
volume.
Just trying to prove what.
Yeah, basically, he's just trying to show that small things transfer heat more quickly than large things. Yeah, that's the whole thing.
This is a very important concept to understand because as you get smaller...
Yeah, you got it roughly right. Well, actually,
if we made a cube
right,
that was 1/2 inch on each side...
Whoa.
You would have 1/2 times 1/2, which is 1/4 of an inch on each side for the surface. 6 of those. You have 6/4 of an inch. That's 1 1/4 inches. Let's make this a 1/2. Oh, I'm sorry. This is for a 1 inch. This is for a 2 inch. Let's go to a 1/2 inch cube. I probably should put it above so it doesn't confuse people conceptually. Volume, surface area. If we go to a 1/2 inch cube...
Yeah, among Mayfair, his demonstration is pretty good.
I
mean, Kent is getting the basic math right. I can't complain about this. This is a decent explanation of the geometry.
Surface area of 1 1/4. I just got a calculator. 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5. Or 1/8, which is Okay, well, just to keep it as fractions, it'd be easier to work with. Okay, 1/8 to 1 1/4 is a ratio of 1 to 12. Now look what's happening here. We have very little volume and a whole lot of surface. As a creature gets smaller and smaller like an ant, pretty soon they have so much surface and so little volume, they fall out of a tree, hit the ground and walk off.
That's also true. I'm taking a drink.
An elephant falls out of the tree, bam! Right?
Yeah, that's true too. Taking a lot of Kent is right drinks.
This problem right here
Kent, stop
is
it.
one of the reasons elephants
Say
are
crazy
wrinkled.
things. Kind of.
Because they have so much body mass, they have to get wrinkles in the skin in order to radiate the heat away. The other reason they're wrinkled is because they're very difficult to iron.
Oh, that actually
But,
landed. Boom.
As an animal gets larger and larger, the surface area to volume ratio becomes a serious problem. Now, this will be important later, Eric, when we get into this about insects. Since insects don't breathe through their mouth like we do, they absorb oxygen through the skin. Every cell in their body needs oxygen, but as your surface area to volume ratio diminishes, you just simply can't get enough oxygen to supply it because you don't have enough skin.
Kent, this was supposed to be about Ganymede.
The only way you can get a huge insect is to increase the air pressure.
Why are we not talking about Ganymede?
There's a maximum size insects can get based upon...
Do you think he
the air
forgot?
pressure.
Did he forget what we were talking
So
about?
one of the proofs we'll get into later
Even I
is
didn't
that
forget,
the
Kent.
world before the flood
Even I
was a
didn't
lot
forget.
different.
What is
The
happening?
fossils we find of giant insects. This is a good proof
Ganymede
that
is
something was
one
different.
giant
Sometime in the past, there must have been a lot more air pressure because of this surface area.
He just totally forgot what we was going on about. Switch to insects. What about the magnetic field of Ganymede, Kent? What was your whole point for this demonstration? I can't. I'm taking a drink. I just can't. I don't.
Allegedly, I didn't. To be fair, I didn't know what his point was. So as far as I know, he didn't have a point. But yeah, your explanation did make sense. I don't know what he's talking about.
Wow. Okay. We'll see. Maybe he'll get back onto Ganymede. I don't even know.
Area to volume ratio problem. Okay, enough on that rabbit trail. I've always wanted to chase it in my seminar. I never got time to. No, we did. Okay, Ganymede
Oh, we're back.
is
Okay.
a large planet. I mean, it's a large moon, but compared to Jupiter, it's real tiny. Now, because it is smaller, it has really a greater surface area to volume ratio problem than Jupiter does. So it should lose heat even faster than Jupiter. One of the reasons, if you want to cool something off, you got a hot piece of, potato, for instance, you break it up and spread it out. All you're doing is increasing the surface exposure. When you want to get something to dissolve faster in water, you break it up. Drop in a lump of chunk of ice into your glass,
Almost makes
or
a
take
point, and then he just starts talking about something else.
Yeah, he's very, very unfocused. Maybe he's high in this one.
It's possible.
the ice cube and crush it and drop it in. Same amount of ice, the ice cube will last longer and dissolve slower than the crystals, the small pieces, because now more surface is exposed to be dissolved or whatever. It's a principle you can use all through science.
That's why I'm using an ice sphere in my drink right now.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, so lowest amount of melting.
Okay. Point is, Ganymede is still hot and it shouldn't be.
Why?
And they admitted in the newspaper article here about Ganymede should have cooled solid billions of years ago. Why does it still have a magnetic field? So what they've done over this Ganymede problem, when the space probe sent this data back and said,
Someone in 1994. But Kent.
As I looked it up while I was rambling, and then I closed the link up, but I can open it up again. So yeah, it has a magnetic field because of the convection within its liquid iron core. Okay.
Yep.
So it hasn't frozen solid or whatever.
And just like with all the other things we talked about, where could that heat possibly be coming from? I don't know, radioactive decay and tidal heating? Like, unless... Right. The thing is, like...
With a moon that size, that close to a planet that large?
Yeah. So for this one, it's just like...
Yeah. building.
Why are we ignoring the new sources of heat? Like, these are things that occur, but Kent wants to just gloss over them because it hurts his narrative.
Look, Ganymede has a strong
did make
magnetic
a bunch
field.
of points and do some math for a while.
Yeah, and he was right about
that.
the math, so there is that.
The scientists start with the assumption, well, we know it's billions of years old, so how did this happen? The thought never enters their mind that maybe it's not billions of years old. So they're busy looking for...
Because that is by far the least likely option. For the solar system to not be about 4.5 billion years old, we would have to fundamentally change huge swaths of what we know about physics. Especially nuclear physics.
Yeah.
ways to keep their evolution, age of the Earth necessity, billions of years. They have to keep that. What they've said is maybe Ganymede, maybe something passed by Jupiter, and the gravitational pull of this passing star or whatever pulled Ganymede in closer to Jupiter.
Star?
And because it was closer, the gravity of Jupiter was stronger, so it's pumping it and it's squeezing the surface, and that's what increased the temperature.
I'm going to go out on a limb and no one thinks a star passed by Jupiter. There would be no coherent solar system after that. Stars don't do that, really. They're too far apart compared to their size. No. I took a drink.
So you know how, oh my gosh, our solar system would look so different.
Yeah,
it would not be a standard plane at all, a planet.
All these nice,
if a star went right by Jupiter, no. Can't.
I don't even know. Sure.
And then poof, it popped back out to its orbit where it is now.
What?
They got to come up with all these wild ideas just to try to save the one concept that the universe is billions of.
Just came up with this wild idea.
Yeah,
because I didn't hear any of this, and you didn't quote any of these, so I think you came up with a wild idea.
I think what that is Kent Hovind read something about a gravitational disturbance.
And he misunderstood it?
Yeah,
hey, listen. It's okay to misunderstand those things. They can be confusing and not very intuitive when you don't know any better. The difference is Kent's acting like he knows better.
Right.
He does not.
Exactly. My guess is that he read some article about
you shouldn't know better until you learn it, right?
Right. So my guess is he read something about a gravitational capture of a moon by Jupiter disrupting the orbits of the moons that were already there or something like that. And then he just thought that it was a star, decided to make this crazy statement. That's the only thing I can think of.
Years old. So when you read the articles on the web about me, and there's some really interesting ones, some of these scoffers, they write whole books, answering Hovind's, young Earth arguments. It's hilarious to read. When you stop it, they think
there might be a book called The Rocks Were There. It's a pretty good book. Probably.
It is a very good book.
Yeah, but I've skimmed it. It's good.
They talked. They answered the question. This is a rule teachers soon learn. The longer the kid's essay answer is, the less he knows about it. How many of you ever did one of those essay questions where you tried to snow the teacher? You don't have a clue what's going on.
To be fair, I've done that.
Going on, so you just talk.
No. You can ramble if you want, but you can also write long papers that have content filled throughout.
Yeah.
So I don't buy that, Ken. Come on.
And pretty soon they get tired of reading and think, well, he must know what he's talking about. Give him an A. And some of these scoffers went to school and never did learn to overcome that problem, and so they write these long diatribes about me, and they'll say, don't you know that Ganymede is still hot because it got sucked in and was pumped by Jupiter?
Ken saying he doesn't understand what people are saying about him.
Yeah.
So he considers it a long diatribe of meaningless mumbo-jumbo because he doesn't understand it.
Well, that's one of those things that, every once in a while he points out, he's like, I've made a goal in my life to avoid all this technical jargon. It's like, well, okay, but but
then you're not going to know how to identify a skeleton as a dinosaur or not.
Right.
And then you're not going to know what the Casimir effect is, and you'll call it a cashmere sweater effect or something. If you don't know, okay, but why are you in the debate about something like that and you have no idea what these things are?
It's fine to say that you try to avoid using this big language because you don't want people to become confused and you want to try, keep it to a level that lay people can understand. But when you show that you yourself just don't understand it, it means you can't actually have the conversation with people who do.
Right.
Because there are technical words that have to be used for reasons.
I'm in favor of simplifying it for people. Not everyone has to do that, but there's an audience who needs things simplified, but it needs to be done by someone who knows what they're talking about.
Right.
And that's not Kent.
Oh, and then Sphincter of Doom says for $5, the length of Hovind's lecture series is telling, according to his own logic. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
It's true.
Gravity and then flung back out, Well, you can believe all that if you want. The fact is, it's hot.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, you got to do all sorts of mental gymnastics to come up with an answer for this, when there is another obvious possible answer. It's not billions of years old.
I'm just going to take a
That's
drink. You guys know why
the
it's
simplest, most logical answer. It's not billions of years old. But I will tell you, to everyone I'm going to give you here, they do have what they claim is an answer to it. But you got to just read it slowly and carefully, and you realize how...
Well, basically what he just said there is, now everything I'm going to tell you is complete and utter nonsense.
And it can be proven so, but that proof is nonsense.
Right. That's basically what just happened right here.
Dumb. Most of them are. They just are silly. Yes, sir?
The same idea
Right. Yeah, the circular planets, yeah. The orbits of the planets going epicycles, I know. People get a pet theory and they just try to hang on to it desperately. We probably all do that. Okay, everybody's blind to their own, problems, but they certainly do that with evolution. They will.
T. Lane points out, I took a quick Google, and big surprise, but Ganymede is thought to be under significant tidal heating. I know, right? Shocker. Shocker.
Yeah, I'm just kind of skimming the Wikipedia article on it, and I'm not seeing any controversy on why it's still warm.
Yeah.
It's just describing hot water plumes and other, heating from within and stuff like that.
Oh, and Supertor Energy says Hovind's videos always look like they were made with Betamax. I think they actually might have been. I think that's a possibility.
They might.
They just got a Betamax camcorder, and then they were like, how do we do this? We don't want to buy a new camcorder, so they got a Betamax to VHS converter. And they're just filming on Betamax and converting it to VHS, and what we have now is probably a rip of the VHS from the Betamax rip. That might actually be what's happening.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Will fight desperately to keep the Earth and universe being billions of years old, because otherwise your frog can't turn into your prince, and you got to have that. Saturn and four planets have rings around them. Saturns are the most visible. We saw them the other night with the telescope. Remember that out there? And it's just like a 2-inch telescope, a spotting scope for the target range. We could see Saturn's rings. Really incredible.
I wasn't there. So.
But he is right that all 4 of the gas/ice giants do have rings, so I'll take a drink for it.
It's not just Saturn's rings in that picture, it's also Saturn.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But yeah, those rings are very impressive looking.
I've seen them.
Same.
Saturn's rings are made of rock and ice. Saturn's rings are beautiful as you get up close to them, and there have been several probes have gone by and photographed them, even gone through the rings, and verified they are indeed rock and ice. Extremely cold ice. Now, the reason they're in a ring on the equator, if you had a basketball covered with water and you started spinning it, what would happen to the water? It'd fly off at the equator, wouldn't it?
Mostly. Not all of it would fly off at the equator. Some would fly off in other directions, but yes, the preponderance of the water would fly off at the equator.
It would tend to move towards the equator as it was flying up.
So, Saturn is spinning, and you can tell where the equator is on Saturn by where the rings are. 4 planets have these rings. Saturn's are the most visible. These ice and rock rings around them. But the rings are unstable. They're moving around. Different moons are going around Saturn, and some people call them shepherding moons. Each of these moons has a gravitational pull. So you got these moons going around these rings also, and they're pulling these crystals of ice and rock out of their orbit, and then dropping them back in. As the moon passes, it loses its gravitational pull.
No, Kent. The reason they're called shepherd moons is because they tend to set up orbital resonances, which keep the rings more stable. It's that's why. And also, they keep certain breaks in the rings because that's where the orbit of the moon is. So it's not entirely accurate to say it pulls them out of their orbit and then it goes back in.
How long can that process stay going and the rings still stay intact? You can't just keep messing it up continually and have it still stay intact. It's a known fact, and there's good information about this in Walt Brown's book, In the Beginning. Got the references right there, page 29, page 69.
Like one solid ring of intact structure. What does he mean by that? Like, if they're going to be moving around, they're still in the ring.
Well, he is. It is true that the ring system is not long-term stable, and it will go away after a few million years.
That's not what he's arguing.
Then maybe I'm not.
I don't think it's what he's arguing. If it is, we've just talked about that so many times already.
Goes through all the
rings didn't exist billions of years ago when the planet formed.
Yeah.
Details on, the Saturn's rings. The fact is, they're unstable. They're expanding. They can't be billions of years old.
I agree with you, Ken. I'll take a drink. Saturn's rings are not billions of years old. Just like, say, a new freckle that popped up on my hand might not be as old as I am. Crazy. Things can have features that are younger than the thing itself.
So, the evolutionist looks at this. They do all the studies and say, wow, the rings are moving. Probably less than 10,000 years old.
Evolutionists don't care about this because they're busy studying evolution.
Well, yeah.
And they don't necessarily care about astronomy. They might as a hobby or whatever, but...
I've also never heard an estimate that was that young for the age of the rings. 10,000 years? I've never heard that estimate.
Then they'll come along and say, see, this proves something nearly hit Saturn 10,000 years ago, got shattered and got caught in the spin and became the rings. Maybe so. But maybe it's
okay,
because
well,
it's not
then
really...
the Earth is not 6,000 years, it's 10,000 years. Then Kent, right? Like, if you say maybe so to that, even that's too old for you.
Yeah. And also, just the fact that he accepts that the collision hypothesis is a reasonable explanation for the rings, it means that even if the rings are only 6,000 years old, it doesn't actually add any evidence for the universe or the solar system being young. It doesn't. Because he is acknowledging that there's a perfectly reasonable way. You know what? I'm just going to take a drink for Kent Hovind making an argument, telling you why the argument is stupid, and then continuing to make the argument anyway.
Excuse me. Okay.
Of years old. So their answer to this is a moon or something came by and shattered into fragments, and it's now the rings. And yes, it is less than 10,000 years old. But that doesn't prove Saturn is. That's what they'll say.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't.
I had another point on that I was going to make, and I forgot it.
Could you make a point on it?
In my video number 6, the Hoven Theory, where I cover about an ice meteor possibly being the cause of the flood here on Earth. If an ice meteor, outer space is full of these big comets that are super cold chunks of ice and snow. If one of those came and hit the Earth, or just came near the Earth, or shattered and came through our solar system like a shotgun, fragments of broken ice crystals, that may be where the rings of Saturn came from.
What? What is that? Taking a drink. Again, I want you to do the math on the orbital mechanics there. That must have been a really, really, really big comet. My goodness. It lost that much water ice, and then still managed...
all of the water for the entire solar system, remember?
And so then this thing...
That's from Ken Bent number, some other number.
So this thing is going to smash into the Earth, and Kent thinks it's going to cause a flood, instead of just vaporize the whole planet, given that this thing would be the largest impactor that we've ever even heard of. My goodness.
I mean... Isn't it larger than the Earth?
I don't think it would have to be larger, but actually I did have a I did have a subscriber, and I haven't used the footage yet. He sent me a simulation he did in Universe Sandbox 2, where he tried to find how big a volume of ice he would have to slam into the Earth to cause a global flood. And the volume of ice was like 2/3 the volume of the Earth. And when he slammed it into that, the first thing that happened was basically the entire thing melted, the entire Earth. And then after it cooled down, yeah, it was covered in water. Good job. Also, we have 426 from Command Cyborg, because that was stupid, and also Beer, because that was stupid, and also Godzilla. So thank you very much for the Godzilla super chat. We will take a drink for that. Remember, if you guys want access to those emojis, channel membership start at $1.99. So feel free.
$1.99. That's less than a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and it's every month instead of every day or whatever.
Right.
Less than a cup of coffee a month. So if you drink coffee, I don't know, keep drinking coffee.
They may indeed have been caused, the 4 planets, plus the craters on the other planets, plus the flood here on Earth, might have all been caused in a giant solar catastrophe. I mean, solar system catastrophe.
So, hold on. Either all of the planets were in alignment, so they could all get pelted by all this, or this one quote-unquote comet had fragments spread literally everywhere through the solar system. Right?
Sure.
Well, that seems a little bit far-fetched, but then again, I guess if it's a miracle...
Catastrophe. And
It would
ice
have to be-
meteor is
it would have
in
to
my
be,
opinion,
yeah.
the most logical candidate.
The one that makes no sense...
I
Kent's like, I think that's the most logical. The one that makes no sense and requires extra miracles. Sure, Kent, that's the one that makes the most sense.
I call it the Hoven Theory because I don't know for sure.
It's not even a theory, Kent. It's barely a hypothesis. It's just nonsense you pulled out of your butt one day.
I look at all the evidence, hey, seems to fit. I tell people if you have a key and it fits the lock.
There's
That
evidence called, like, really basic astronomy. Like, I've never taken a course in astronomy, okay? Never. And I already know more about it than you need to know why the Hoven Theory is absurd.
Yeah. Yep.
So, has he looked at all the evidence? Well,
He's looked at some of it.
maybe,
He's made some of it up.
But if you have no idea how to interpret it, and there are experts who do, maybe stop calling them idiots and start listening.
Yeah. Well, so Kent's reasoning is basically like at a 4-year-old level, where it's like, oh, hey, there are craters on the moon, and craters are caused by impacts, and he just thinks up some wild story that makes no sense, but that involves stuff impacting on the moon, and he just goes with it. And it's like, there's no attempt to assess the actual energies involved, to assess the orbital mechanics, to assess, the
This
heat
is
release.
math that can be done.
Right. And, there's just no attempt to even engage with any of that, because Kent operates at the level of basically a 4-year-old in most areas of science. And sure,
So when I say things like he's not doing the honest work, that would be the honest work to do.
Right.
Everyone, I think, watching knows that. But
Oh, yeah. So here we go.
can't know it.
Doesn't prove that's the key for the lock, but it could be, right? And if you have a theory and it fits all the observations, well, maybe you have the right theory.
Okay.
Does-
But in that case, Kent, you don't. You don't have the right theory. We know 100% that you do not have the right theory.
And prove you do, but it's better than if your key does not fit the lock. Now you know
Tell
you
you
have the
what,
wrong
Ken,
theory.
why
For
don't,
sure.
why don't you test in a lab your Hoven theory?
Yeah, yeah. Or even just a simulation of like an orbital simulator. It'd be interesting. Set it up in Universe Sandbox 2, Kent.
No, he wants us to observe an entire process of a star being born, right?
Yeah.
Which takes how long? Well over the length of a human lifetime?
Yeah, millions
I
of
want
years.
you to perform the Hoven theory in a lab, Kent. If you can do that, I'll believe it.
That's a good point, yeah.
Make it happen in a lab. A huge thing of ice.
Alright.
Just
Evolution, it doesn't fit any of the locks. Okay, let's come in a little closer now. We look at our planets in space. We can also look at the fact that some of these planets...
No, he's not. He hasn't been for most of us.
He hasn't been for... did he mention... He mentioned insect surface area. So I guess he talked a little bit about...
I guess that's...
evolution, though. I don't think he's talked about evolution at all for the past 33 minutes.
That's evolution adjacent, at least.
Yeah, he talked about things that can possibly evolve.
Yep.
have really good orbits, almost perfectly circular orbits, egg-shaped a little bit, but amazingly good orbits, and...
Egg-shaped? You can't say ellipse. You can't, whatever. You know what, fine.
They're not even shaped like eggs.
No, they're not.
Eggs aren't shaped like ellipses.
No,
even
eggs.
the two-dimensional cross-section of an egg is not quite an ellipse. It's got a slightly... Well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
themselves are amazingly round. The moon, for instance, is just almost perfectly a round ball.
Yeah,
It is
that's true. I'll take
spinning
a drink.
so slow, there's very little bulge at the equator. The Earth is spinning a lot faster, and there's about a 20-mile bulge.
Is it miles? Whatever. Fine. I was about to complain about miles, but I don't care.
Equatorial diameter is 20 miles farther than the polar diameter. If you spin a basketball real fast, it'll flatten out like a frisbee.
No, the air pressure inside will prevent that, Kent. That is stupid.
You'd have to get it really fast. The Earth is spinning once a day, which flattens it out a little bit, pulls the poles in, sucks the equator out. About a 20-mile difference, which really is nothing compared to 8,000-mile Earth. You know, from space you can't see that 20-mile difference. The moon is, I don't know what it is, like 1 or 2 or 3 mile difference. It's very little. The moon is spinning once every 29 days. It also goes around the Earth once every 29 days.
Roughly accurate. I'll take a drink.
Which is why we never see the other side. As it's turning, it's always facing us. You know?
Yeah.
They never see the other side of the moon unless they go out there and take a picture with a rocket or something. But the moon is going around the Earth once every 29 days. The moon is almost perfectly smooth. The theories of how we got the planets and the moon all fall apart. There's the most common theory, I think probably the most common theory now, is called the accretion theory.
No, even when Kent Hovind made this, was sometime around 2006. The impact hypothesis was dominant and had been for over a decade. The accretion theory has not been a likely candidate, and it's the accretion hypothesis, but it hasn't been a likely candidate for a very long time. So Kent is just way behind the time.
Eggs are ovoid, is that correct? I don't even know.
Yeah.
I'll believe you, Monk Mayfair. I don't know better.
They are not a rotation of an ellipse, as far as I know. Of course, I suppose it depends on the egg. Ostrich eggs are nearly spheres.
So the planets formed after the Big Bang. All these particles flew out. And then they all started drawing together because of gravity. And the more mass you get, the stronger gravity becomes. And they start sucking in particles. And pretty soon, you know, you got a planet. Well, you'd have a clump of rock stuck together. What's going to cause it to melt into this perfectly smooth ball?
The fact that it's hot and that your infalling rock has potential energy, which then converts to kinetic energy, and then when it hits each other, the only place for it to go is thermal energy. I know that Kent knows about the conservation of energy. He talks about it all the time. He knows about it. It's one of his big sticking points, but where did all the energy come from? Because the conservation of energy. Kent, it's hot because of the thing that you point out as one of the most fundamental principles in physics. And when you point that out, you're not wrong. But that very reason is why they get hot after accretion. It's why when things impact on the moon, there's a flash of light. We've photographed this. We've had film of it. It's because when they hit, all that kinetic energy suddenly turns into thermal energy, and things glow white hot for a little bit. Like, this is... For someone who likes to go on and on about thermodynamics, that question right there is just mind-bogglingly stupid. I cannot think of any nicer way to say it. Kent, you are an absolute moron. And I'm taking a drink.
Whoa.
And so their answer to that one is, well, meteors hit, this supplies heat and energy.
Just the accretion supplies energy, Kent. And what is the difference between a meteor hitting and just the accretion during the accretion? That's just a bunch of stuff hitting each other and clumping together. That's what the clumping is. It stopped falling into the gravity well.
And that's what melted it. Well, there are some marks on the moon, but the moon is in an almost perfectly circular orbit around the Earth. And it's almost perfectly round. I mean, I don't think that's going to form by an accretion of particles over billions of years.
Actually, that is one of the problems with the impact hypothesis, is that the Earth, or the moon system, the orbit around the moon is actually suspiciously nice for an impact. Would actually be a little bit easier to explain with an accretion. But there are problems with the accretion hypothesis, so it probably isn't true.
If you want to believe that, that's fine, but that's not science, that's religion.
Ken, here's the thing about accretion, right? Accretion tends to end with more or less circular orbits, because if you look at the disk in the area where the thing is accreting and you average out all those orbits, you know, eccentricities tend to be as likely in one direction as the other. So it cancels out to a reasonably circular orbit. And then later, as orbits settle out and there's interactions between different planets and whatnot, they tend to fall into resonance orbits. And over time, resonance orbits circularize because they're resonance orbits. You're more likely to get a gravitational interaction in a resonance orbit that kicks you into a more stable, more circular orbit than you are the opposite. And if you're in a situation where orbital interactions with gravity are kicking you into a less and less stable orbits, you're going to get ejected from the system anyway. So we're not going to know about it after 4.5 billion years.
That's what they believe. And that'll be their answer to this one. But the moon goes around the Earth, but the moon is gradually getting farther away. We're slowly losing the moon. It's leaving us. The numbers vary. Now, people argue about this. There's good articles about this here. The impact article from Institute for Creation Research. If you want to get some fascinating reading, these little impact articles, they're just one-page articles. They're 10 cents a piece. And they started them in 1974, I believe. And they're up to number like 350 now. So for $35, you can get all of the back issues. And it is just amazing reading. I mean,
you could also get like a couple large pizzas and like a Coke or something. I highly recommend the pizzas and the Coke. Way better use of your $35. Just putting that out there.
It's an entire course in itself, just reading all the impact articles that they put out for the last 25 years. This one is impact number 110, published in 1982, August.
Even with creationist sources, Kent's going all the way back to 1982, which means that since creationists are always at least 30 years behind, that this article is using, what? 60s science, probably? Science from the 60s? Yeah. So, Kent is basically here using 40-year-old science at best. No, 50-year-old science, really.
Of 82.
So, good job, Kent.
And you can still, I think you can get some of these on ICR's website, icr.org. But they go through by Thomas Barnes.
No, it would be the 50s. I can't do math.
Was a University of Texas, El Paso. I've spoken there twice, done debates at University of Texas, El Paso.
No offense to any from here from El Paso, not my favorite place. Been there, was kind of, just didn't impress me.
Matter of fact, recently, last month, yeah. He was a physics professor there. He was a young Earth creationist. And they didn't like him because they didn't want a University of Texas professor who believed the Bible. They tried all sorts of things to, ridicule him. He's now, if he's still alive, he's probably in his 80s. But I've talked to him a couple times on the phone.
He's probably in his 80s, just like your sources, Kent.
Really gracious man. He wrote this article
That's a joke
20
that
years ago
landed.
about the young age for the moon and the Earth, showing that because the moon is getting farther away, that means, obviously, it used to be closer. Now, if you bring the moon in closer, you create a problem, because the moon is what causes the tides. Now, I don't worry about the tides here, even though I'm in Pensacola, because we're 60 feet above sea level. But the folks along the beach worry about the tides, right? Mom and I, a few months ago, were in Alaska, and we got to see the second highest tides.
Brilliant editing.
Which is where Anchorage, Alaska is, which is where it got its name, Anchorage, a good place to anchor. But I forget the name of the bay now, but it goes up and down. That's
One day my dream will come true.
Generally,
and
the world's
Neil
tides,
Green
I
will
think,
just
probably
walk
average
in
around 3 or 4 foot
inside and
tidal
start
change, from high
talking.
tide to low tide.
Is that actually one of your dreams?
It is now.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess it's possible. All right, here we go. A little bit more.
Pensacola here, it's not even that. It's probably only 2 feet. Very small tidal change. Other places, it's 50 feet. But the moon is causing these tides. As the Earth is turning under the moon's gravity is pulling on the water. This creates a squeezing effect. On the sides of the Earth, it squeezes in, and it pulls the water up on one side, and because of the squeezing effect, it pushes it out on the other side.
So Kent Hovind knows more or less how tides work. So first I'm going to take a drink for him knowing basically how a tide works. So why don't you think he thinks about that when it comes to, I don't know, Ganymede, Kent?
Because he thinks you have to have water to have a tide, maybe.
Well, even if that were true, Ganymede has a lot of water.
Does it?
Yeah, it's mostly water, if I remember correctly.
Liquid water?
Under the surface. Yeah, that's where those plumes come from.
Sure, you're not lying right now?
No.
Because that's what
I'm definitely sure I'm not lying. I might not be correct. That's always a possibility. But I'm very confident that I'm...
I don't know what Ken thinks about Ganymede as far as if there's liquid water or not.
He probably has never thought about it.
Well, he might have, but I don't think he mentioned that in this video. So
I don't think he has, no.
So you actually end up getting a high tide on the opposite side from the moon. But the high tide on the other side is not quite as high as the high tide on the near side.
No, Kent, they're not directly beneath and behind the moon. They're offset. But you know what? I don't even care. Like, who cares? It's whatever. You can't get the tides right, even when you get the basic principle right. Sure, of course you can.
Tides are... To be fair, tides are actually pretty complicated.
They are. You know what, though?
And I watched some PBS Space Time saying, tides are misinterpreted and they're really like this. And I was like, well, I don't know.
You know what? Tide comes in, tide goes out, never a miscommunication. You can't explain that. Therefore, God.
One on the Earth and the Moon, why would you think there wouldn't be one on Ganymede?
Yeah.
If nothing was moving, just the Earth spinning, you would get a high tide every 6 hours. Or you'd get a high tide, 6 hours later you have a low tide, 6 hours later another high tide.
And basically.
It would all be real nice every 6 hours. But because while we're spinning around, the moon is also moving. And so you have two motions to consider. So the average is every 6 hours and 25 minutes. You have a tidal change. Because in 6 hours, the moon has moved 25 minutes worth in its orbit around the Earth. Who cares, right? Okay.
Yeah, good question, Kent. What's your point?
If the moon were closer, the tides would be higher. And we'll finish this one thought here and close on this. There's a law in physics called the inverse square law. And I want to put this on the quiz. What is the inverse square law? Be able to explain this. If two objects are attracted to each other, how strongly do they pull each other? Two magnets, let's say. If you get the magnets half the distance apart, you take the fraction 1/2, inverse it, and square it. It's now 4 times the pull. If you brought the moon back into 1/3 the distance, you take that fraction, 1/3, inverse it, that means flip it over, and square it. It's 9 times the pull. When you're measuring how bright a light is, my dad was an electrical engineer at Caterpillar Tractor Company. He was showing me all these charts and graphs they use. You got a bunch of people in the office, how much light do you want at the desk for the guy to work? Then you got to figure out how far away is your light on your ceiling, how many candle power does it produce, because if you double the distance, say I'm 5 feet away from that light, and it looks to be as bright as 100 candles.
How long-winded can one human being be while describing the inverse square law? That's what we're finding out right now.
I don't know if this is still the same sentence or the same paragraph or what.
I mean, I wouldn't want to have to diagram any one of Ken Hovin's sentences.
Me neither. I don't want to even diagram my own
10 feet
sentences.
away, it'd only be as bright as 25 candles. Inverse, I think that's the right number. Is that right? Inverse square?
Who cares, Kent? We get the point.
I'm not going to do that math.
It would drop off as logarithmically as opposed to linearly. As you get closer to the light, you half the distance, it's 4 times as bright. You half it again, it's 16 times as bright. The inverse square laws, I will cover that in video number 6. They apply when you're dealing with forces involving magnets, gravity, light, and girls. When you half the distance, the attraction is quadruple. A lot of guys don't understand that.
Yep, take a drink.
We'll get into more of that later. But this inverse square law says if the moon were closer, the tides would be higher. Much higher.
Okay.
The problem becomes worse the farther back in time you go. So the evolutionists tried to answer this by saying, well, you don't know that the moon has always been moving away at the same rate. Good point. I don't.
Yeah.
We do know it was closer. And if it's getting farther away, it used to be closer as you go back in time. This does put some kind of time limit. We cover in here...
Yeah, but Kent, everyone I've ever seen try to recover a time limit puts it, even with the current recession rate, which we know is too high to extrapolate back. We actually do know what the lunar recession rate was at various times in history, and we know that it's especially high now. But even if you extrapolate this one back, it still puts this quote-unquote time limit way longer than you think the universe is old. Like, the most recent one I ever saw, and this was from decades ago, was about 1 billion years. Right? And we happen to know that because of the odd configuration of the continents right now, the Earth is actually transferring a lot more of its rotational energy per orbit of the moon. Oh, take a drink from Mothra. The Earth is transferring an unusually large amount, historically speaking, of its rotational energy to the moon, because that's where the moon is getting that energy from, right? So the moon is going into a higher orbit. Well, that's because of the tidal actions on the Earth as a result of its actual spin. Because the gravity of this Earth isn't even everywhere, so as it rotates, that actually exerts different amounts of force on the moon. And basically, the Earth is slowing down, and that energy in its rotation, and that rotational energy is being transferred into orbital energy for the moon, kicking it into ever higher orbits. But yeah, we know that's been going at slower rates before. Oh, take a drink for Mothra. So yeah, I think I said this before, but I spent an entire night in Cheyenne, because what else is there to do in Cheyenne, trying to come up with math that would make this a problem for an old Earth, and I literally never could. I spent hours just working on it, sitting there with my calculator and physics equations and everything I could think of. Yeah, I know, I like to dunk on Cheyenne.
Well, Kent will just say that it's a problem, but...
Well, some creationist
is
in the
it going
80s
to show
said
math?
it.
I don't think so.
Well, that
I don't
guy
think
in
it's
the,
going to show any math.
That guy in the 80s did it, so why would Kent bother to double check a
Is it going to
creationist?
show that guy's math?
No.
Like,
No.
tell us what that math is? Just tell us.
I can't
that
imagine he's going to show us the math. And we've only got 3 minutes and 30 seconds left in this one.
Okay.
But it's
I mean, he did show math earlier. So.
No, yeah.
This is which number? Yeah, number 5, page 11. You can get more information on this from source number 3, Scott Hughes, The Collapse of Evolution. Number 6 is Dennis Peterson, Unlocking the Mystery of Creation. And number 11, Walter Brown's book, In the Beginning, about the moon. Okay, back up one slide. So I'll ask you to explain what is the inverse square law. That's the law that says as an object gets closer, the gravity increases.
Slides up.
The pull.
Oh, he has slides up. He has had them in the past up, but for some reason right now we're not getting them. I guess his editor was out that day.
Well, I did see a jump cut earlier from him standing there to him standing there.
Well, hey, you know what? That's just because he was getting ready for his YouTube career. Because if there's one thing that means you're ready for YouTube, it's knowing how to do a good jump cut.
Yeah.
Force of the increases as the inverse of the square of the fraction. That's not a good way to phrase it. Let's just say it like
he also still has a great tie on.
Oh, yeah, that's not bad. It's very spacey. I like it. Is that Voyager?
I don't know. It's too blurry.
Okay.
A quadruple the traction. We bring it into one.
Look, Ken has nice ties. We're never going to take that away from him. Or at least he had nice ties. Now he just wears Hawaiian shirts, but, you know, he had nice ties.
Third the distance, it'll be 9 times the pull. And what phenomena does the moon cause on the Earth? The tides. Put that down. Heidi's a quiz question. Also, actually, the moon causes what's called a land tide. As we turn under the moon, Pensacola lifts up about 2 inches. The entire city. We don't notice it because all of Florida is going up 2 inches. You know, goes up, goes back down. Called a land tide.
I wonder if that causes any heating in the crust of the Earth when the whole thing flexes. I don't know.
So you don't have to be liquid to feel a tide. Kent knows that. Okay.
Yeah.
If you get a land tide going up and down, this can create stresses on the crust of the Earth a little bit, and can trigger earthquakes, or can increase the likelihood of them happening.
Maybe heat? No, we're not going to get there. We're not going to get there.
How can you tell the Earth is going up? I don't know how they tell that. I'm sure there's ways. Get up there in a helicopter, and that wouldn't work because then the air's going up too.
Maybe they did the math first.
Maybe they did.
Maybe that thing that you just
as opposed to
taught a
the
lot,
mass
but...
of the, done theoretically. I don't know that it's actually been measured. Some things are theoretical and, are logically true, but cannot be proven. So that's a good question. Theoretical science instead of empirical science.
What? That's not a distinction.
Okay, so if we ask you on the quiz to name some ways to show the Earth is young, what could you name so far? Quick review. Population.
Which is stupid.
Or I should say, phrase the question, Heidi. Name some ways to show the universe is young, not the Earth. Population shows the Earth is young. That'd be one, would count. Galaxies are spinning.
Which is, we've already gone over why that's stupid.
That's
Galaxies are spinning.
Yeah, but it doesn't prove anything.
But that proves the Earth is young somehow, not the universe, but the Earth, because that's what Kim just said.
Well, if you remember, his point was that the spiral arms would get spun out into nothing, even though the spiral arms aren't a coherent group of stars. They're standing pressure waves.
I got that wrong.
The distance to the moon is increasing. Jupiter is cooling off. Ganymede is way too hot. And Saturn still has rings. Those are 6 we've covered, right?
Yeah.
What's that? Tanya, are you griping or complaining? Yes. Okay, thank you, Tanya. If you're going to be a Hoven, you have to learn to take ridicule. We get it all the time, right?
For good reason.
We gave 6. I'll probably say name 4 ways to show the universe is young. We're going to get into a lot more. Okay? Put that as a question.
Oh, goody.
They're all in the notebook.
Goody.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the thing. This is the end of this video. I've got the next video ready to go. We're going to take an intermission. Going to do the next video. And, yeah, we'll be back with CSE 1016. Or whatever. So, haven't seen it. Don't know how it is. Don't even know if the audio is any good. But we're going to find out. And stick with us, because we'll be back. I want to take a moment to talk about something serious. There is a problem facing late surviving non-avian dinosaurs in modern America. Hunting is very strictly regulated, and only allowed at certain times of the year. This means that for much of the year we have to rely on farm-raised food, which means money. If you want to help a starving dinosaur, please consider donating on Patreon, or buying from my merch store. Links are in the description. Please help. Dinosaurs all over YouTube are depending on you to help them through the hunting off-season.
Oh, Nani? Dare? Oh, Gojira desu ka? Hai, Gojira-san.
Alright, we are back. I have loaded up the next video. I'm not going to bother fixing all the cropping just because, I don't know. Not going to. Also, we have 4 100 Rs, which I believe was the Argentinian pesos, if I remember correctly.
Argentinian pesos.
From Tiktaalik. Saturn didn't have any rings when I was around. That's true. ARP also, ARS is a different currency with the same name. Oh, weird. That's bizarre. I do not understand how any of that works, but I believe you. Wait, Justin Arcasaur, did I speak French? I mean, I do speak some French. But I don't remember actually using any of it. But hey, maybe I did. I don't know. And yes, I says this is the weirdest stuff he's ever seen. Yeah, yeah, basically. All right, well, let's just jump back into it. So this is CSE 101 Class 6. By the way, there's a CSE 102 and a 103, just in case you guys were wondering. Yeah, it's going to be a long time before we run out of Kent Hovind.
Doing our best to cover all of it.
Yeah, by the time that we die or the heat death of the universe occurs, one of those things, hopefully we'll have gone through basically all of Kent Hovind's nonsense. Oh, Japanese equals French? I actually speak extremely little Japanese. I knew... Yeah, so don't get too excited because I did a little bit of Japanese in there.
Well, welcome to class number 6 of our series on Creation Science 101. We're going to take a quiz over what we've covered so far from last week, and then we'll go on to some new material dealing with the age of the Earth. Let's deal with comets now. Comets are flying around through the solar system. I don't know the percentages, but they estimate that a certain percentage are made of snow and ice, packed. Some are made of rock.
This is... Oh, goodness. Oh, I hit the wrong button.
Deal with comets. Some are made of iron.
So here is where Kent Hovind is mixing up what an asteroid is with what a comet is. And I just think that that's great. Keep it up, Kent.
I could be wrong, but I believe comets are made of ice.
Primarily ice, yeah. Now, in astronomical terms, ice includes a large number of volatiles. It's not just water ice. So it includes carbon dioxide, ammonia, methane, ethane, a whole bunch of simple carbohydrates. Hydrocarbons.
Frozen solid, right?
Right.
Really cold ices.
Now, meteors, or well, asteroids, sorry, that's what I meant to say. Asteroids are made up of primarily what astronomers call rock, which is basically all the things that aren't volatile. So basically, if it would be at room temperature, stable, or if it would evaporate basically, you know, like around 100 Celsius at like normal atmospheric pressure and whatnot, then it's probably an ice. So solid oxygen would be an ice and stuff like that. But things like iron, silicon, carbon, stuff like that on their own would be rocky. So the rocky ones are the asteroids, and the icy ones are the comets. But Kent Hovind can't even get that right.
Some are made of nickel. Some are combinations of all of the above. They can...
I'm going to take a drink. There are no pure nickel or pure iron comets, or even asteroids can't. Asteroids tend to be a mix of alloys, and a lot of it's iron by weight, but some of them have more or less nickel, and you know they also have other things.
Tell what they are by what color they burn, if they burn into the atmosphere. Just flying around, though, as they get closer to the sun, the solar wind begins to blow a tail off.
Not for the ones that are asteroids, Kent.
It begins to melt pieces off, and...
Nope. Taking a drink. But remind me, what is it called when you go have a phase change directly from solid to gas? Is it melt?
Is that solid to gas? Is that sublimation?
It is sublimation, not melting. Yeah. Kent doesn't know the difference between sublimation and melting.
The tail flying behind the...
Oh wait, my chat isn't scrolling. All right, guys, let me try to fix that. Give me a second. So you guys didn't hear about this, but basically earlier. Oh, now it's working. Anyway, look. Before we went live, I thought we weren't going to be able to go live because YouTube was telling me, "Oh, streaming is unavailable right now." And I was just like, what do we do?
And that was 8 minutes before we were supposed to go live?
Yeah, we fixed it less than 2 minutes before we went live.
2 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Less than 2 minutes.
Less than 2 minutes we had it fixed. So, I don't know exactly what's going on with YouTube right now, but it looks fixed right now. So I'm sorry that happened with the chat not scrolling up anymore on screen. But if it happens again, please do keep letting me know. Tesla Ranger says sublimation equals quickly melting and evaporating. Yeah, no, that is not what that means.
No, I mean really quickly though.
All right, so I hope that's working now. It looks like it is. So okay. If it happens again, let me know. And of course, there will be a delay. So wait a few.
Comet is actually fragments of cometary material,
yeah.
which means they're constantly losing some of what they have.
No, Ken, it means that short period comets are constantly losing a little bit of what they have. Long period comets, the ones that don't tend to get as close to the sun, yeah, the ones that are in nice, relatively circular orbits out past Neptune.
Yeah, up there? Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, they don't do that. So, yeah.
Estimates are that a comet can last about 10,000 years. Now, there are two kinds of comets. They're called short period comets. Those are ones that come around and they can predict when they're going to come back. Halley's Comet, for instance, is probably one of the most famous short period comet. So there'll be a test or quiz question. What two types of comets are there? Short period are, they come around once, come around again in, some are 3 or 4 years they come around. Some are 76 years like Halley's Comet. Some are longer than that. The other comets are called long period comets where they just come by once and we don't know where they came from or where they're going. Just came by once.
Actually, if that had happened to a comet, there would be enough time to observe its orbit to actually work out the actual orbit. Like, do you remember Oumuamua, the extrasolar object that passed through the solar system? What was it, like 2 years ago?
Something like that.
So, within just a couple days of observation, they were able to tell that its orbital eccentricity was so high that it wasn't actually orbiting the sun.
It's hyperbolic.
Yep. So, any comet that you could see, no matter how long the period is, given a day or so, or a few days of observation, we could work out the orbit. Now, it takes a lot of careful observations and some fairly complex math, but it's also not something that people don't do routinely. People who are trained to do this. People like astronomers. Imagine that.
And it's not like they got to try to figure out the math, like they already know the equations. Right?
Yeah.
They just got to make a couple measurements and plug the numbers in.
Well, more than a couple, but yeah, basically.
Well, it is more than that, but like the work has already been done because they know what they're doing, right? So they make their measurements and then they can see.
And they plug in the numbers.
Just play Kerbal Space Program; it'll become intuitive.
I do have, well, almost, but I do have to agree with Bent here. Do play Kerbal Space Program because Kerbal Space Program is it's an amazingly educational video game. Now, granted, it doesn't teach you everything about spaceflight, but it gives you a really good understanding of how it works in the basic sense.
It made the very basics of orbital mechanics intuitive. Mm-hmm. Right? So that I know that a star flying really close to Jupiter from some weird angle coming up, if the plane's, the solar system's flat like that or whatever, it's going to throw all that off.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Okay. You can't predict those, of course. But short period comets have a life expectancy of less than 10,000 years. They should have destroyed themselves by then. The fragments of these comets that are breaking apart, sometimes the Earth runs through the path of these comets. Because the Earth is going around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour. If you're driving your car at 66,000 miles an hour through a cloud of debris, a dust, and a sandstorm, it's going to create all sorts of problems. And
that's why you should pull to the side of the road when there's a sandstorm. I know, because they have those here. It's just safety PSA. It's telling you. Don't try to drive through it. Just pull off to the side of the road, wait it out.
The Earth running...
Can it provide any legal driving advice?
Well, it's not legal advice.
Talk to your local driver's educational facility for how to drive correctly.
Yeah, for sure.
I take no responsibility for driving mistakes made based on the content from this video.
Fair enough.
Through this trail of debris in space, it's the same as if it was hitting us at 66,000 miles an hour. We're hitting it. And our atmosphere is 100 to 200 miles thick. It burns up 99.999% of all the debris out there. It acts as a cushion. And
he's actually broadly correct. I'm going to let him finish, but I think he's going to get the whole idea of a meteor shower basically right, and then I'm going to take a drink for it.
And so at that speed, the air friction gets up so hot, so fast, it burns them, turns them to ash, and they disintegrate.
Is that what happens to comets, Kind?
Well, actually, that is what happens to some of the trail of short-term comets.
He's conflating comets and asteroids and meteors a bunch of times.
Yeah, but he is giving an okay-ish explanation of meteor showers. I'm going to take a quick drink for just like, it's close enough.
But he did start out calling them.
Well, yeah, he did.
Comets.
Yeah, he doesn't know there's between comets and asteroids and. Yeah.
About 5 fragments a day get all the way through the atmosphere and strike the Earth.
I don't know if that's true.
Sometimes
but it seems
pretty
reasonable.
good-sized ones. When they hit the Earth, they can do a lot of damage. You were with me, you saw the Behringer crater in Arizona. Gigantic hole
I've seen that. It's really cool. I've been there.
in the ground. Something hit and blew this massive hole in the ground. They say the bottom of the hole is big enough that you could play 20 football games simultaneously.
That sounds about right, having seen it. Yeah, that seems reasonable. I mean, you want to flatten it out first, but yeah.
On the sides of this crater, you could hold, I think they said 2 million spectators if you set it up with bleachers.
Oh, like if we're not just talking about the rim, we're talking about like the whole like reasonably steep sides of the craters. Yeah, maybe that might work.
Big crater. So what?
Yeah.
What's the point, Kent?
I mean, it is cool.
Large crater.
Have you ever been there?
No, but
it's quite a drive.
Gonna make a point about it, but instead he's just telling trivia about it.
Yeah, it's quite a drive. In fact, actually, even when you get to the exit, you take the exit, it's still quite a drive because this is not actually very close to the highway at all. So I remember I turned there because basically I knew I was going to be passing it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it so that's where I stop for lunch. And then I take the exit, and like it's like 20 minutes later, and I finally get to the place. I'm like, oh my goodness, it took forever.
It's about, I think, 7/10 of a mile across, if I recall. It's named Behringer because some guy named Behringer bought it.
Yep.
He bought the property. It's the middle of no place, Arizona.
Yeah, Kent's right about that. It is named Behringer Crater for the guy who bought it.
He wouldn't want the property for anything else. But he knew that many comets are made of nickel. Nickel is a relatively expensive metal. It's used, they mix nickel in with iron to make gun barrels, because when it explodes, when you fire the rifle or the cannon, it's going to swell and come back. It allows the metal to swell and not stretch. If you just used iron, it would swell, and every time you shoot, it gets a little bigger, and pretty soon your bullet's flopping around in there, and you don't want that for sure. So the nickel is used to give the elasticity, but nickel is a pretty rare element, and the nickel is what is highly, comets contain a high degree of nickel. So Behringer bought this property. He thought, you know, if a comet hit here, maybe it's buried down there someplace. I'm going to dig it up. I'm going to mine it. I have a nickel mine and be able to sell this metal. So they found these fragments of nickel all over the fields. As it was coming in, apparently it was burning and pieces are flying off the back of the comet, and then they would cool down and drip. So they find pretty good chunks of nickel all over this field, you know, within a few miles of the crater. He drilled several holes in the bottom looking for the meteor, found nothing, went broke. He had enough money for one more hole, and he was out there with his pistol shooting in the mud, studying, you know, how deep did that thing go anyway, you know, checking the size of a bullet and the speed compared to how hard is the mud. And he noticed a gun accidentally discharged, is the story I heard, at an angle. So the bullet went off at an angle, hit the mud, and made a round hole. He thought, man, if you hit at an angle, it's going to make an oval-shaped hole. No, it made a round hole.
So I don't know about the historical veracity of this actual thing, but Kent is actually hinting at a real thing. Most angles at which a meteor will hit whatever it's impacting, if it's solid rock, will actually result in a roughly circular crater. You actually have to get extremely shallow angles to get like ovoid craters. And that's one of the things that people have asked is like, how come all the, or not all, but how come the vast majority of the craters on the moon are circular? Shouldn't most of them be like oval, since, you know, it's not likely that asteroids are always going to hit like, you know, face on, right? But actually it turns out that at these speeds, the shockwave spreads out in a circular pattern for nearly all angles of incidence, right? So it is actually an interesting thing, and people have done a lot of physics experiments, and there's a lot of like complicated math behind this, and, you know, fluid dynamic stuff. And but yeah, it is actually an interesting thing that yes, when asteroids and other impactors hit solid objects, they almost always leave circular craters until they get to very, very shallow angles, which is contrary to what you see in Hollywood, where Hollywood likes to have lots of gouge marks and whatnot for craters. Not normally what you would see.
He said, wait a minute, maybe the comet hit at an angle, still made a round hole, but here I've been digging down in the middle of the hole for this comet, it might be buried outside the hole. So he did a bunch of shooting into the mud to see, you know, what it would do as far as, and you notice one side comes up higher than the other of the lip that lifts up. So he went back and measured the mountains around his crater and found one side's higher. He calculated which way the meteor was going to be coming, and he said, wow, it's probably right out here. He had enough money for one more hole. He went out, drilled down, kept hitting something that kept breaking his drill bits, and went broke. That's where the story stopped.
That part I remember not being the case from my visit to the Behringer crater, but not firmly enough to say that Kent is wrong. But my recollection from having gone through the museum area is that he never actually found anything that was likely the meteor, and while he didn't quite go broke, he basically had to abandon the project.
That's the Behringer crater, so there may indeed be something down there. Some people think there's nothing down there. It probably got so hot coming in it broke apart, and it hit like a shotgun. A bunch of little pieces hit. So there really isn't a mother lode. Who knows, okay? But anyway, comets are constantly losing material. This is a fact. Nobody argues with this.
You were just talking about a rocky asteroid this whole time, Kent. Why are you switching back to you know what? I don't even know. I'm just taking a drink.
He's been saying comet for a while. He's been saying comet for a while.
I just hate so much that Kent Hovind not only does not know what a dinosaur is, evidently he doesn't know what the difference between an asteroid and a comet is. It's mind-boggling. Like, these aren't the same objects. I don't get it.
And they have a life expectancy of less than 10,000 years. And you can't just keep losing and losing like comets are doing. I tell people it's like your checkbook, you know. You can't just keep losing and losing. If your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall.
Money, so
yeah,
maybe think about that aspect of it, Kent. You haven't even addressed that yet.
Every time. You just can't keep spending money. But these comets are flying around with this life expectancy of less than 10,000 years. So I mentioned this in my seminars, and one scoffer named Madsen has a whole website devoted just to me. Madsen does. I think that he sent me his book. Several people have sent me his book. How good are those young Earth proofs, or something like that. It's funny to read because
that sounds like a terrible title. How good are those young Earth proofs anyway? I hope that's not the real title.
I don't think that's the title.
Okay. Well, Kent is known to.
Why would Kent get that accurate?
Well, Kent, yeah, Kent does have what we might call a creative memory.
Yeah.
Just like students I had in high school, you know, they think because they said something, therefore they answered the question, you know.
Who have we seen that might fit that description? Because they said something, they've answered the question.
Wait. No. I don't know. The Kent guy.
The Kent guy, yeah. It's almost like there's some projection going on. Not that I'm a psychologist.
And the more they talk, it's pretty obvious the less they know about it. You probably did essay questions like that, right? Called a snow job, right? Just keep talking and talking.
I watch videos every Tuesday on that.
Yep. Every Tuesday. It's either you or your son, Kent. Although every once in a while it's something else, but whatever.
And you ought to read some of the arguments they give and just go slowly and think about what they're saying. Oftentimes, it's hilarious. Madsen said, here's his answer to my comet argument. Okay, he said, based on a study of the orbits of several long-period comets, the Dutch astronomer Jan Oort,
not Jan. I'm just going to take a drink for bad pronunciation.
proposed. That means he guessed, he thought, he hoped, he prayed.
No, he looked at the data and saw that a particular explanation would explain it neatly. That's what
a
that
lie
means.
from Kent, and it's very disrespectful when he says things like that.
Yeah.
That's classless.
That a great shell of comets existed at the remote frontiers of our solar system. Remote frontiers of our solar system. I'll show you what he means by that in a minute. Talk about remote.
Is he about to say solar system big, therefore press X to doubt? Like, is that going to be his argument?
We know how big the solar system is. Whether or not there's an Oort Cloud in that area still exists, Kent.
Look, if he says...
There's just no space there.
If his argument is, this number is big, therefore press X to doubt, I'm taking a drink for it. And I'm obviously, that's the gist of it. He doesn't have to literally say that, because I don't think Kent knows the press X to doubt mean.
No, he won't literally say press X to doubt, just like he doesn't literally sell snake oil.
Jonathan H for 5, thank you very much for the super chat, says, most of what Freud believed has been debunked, but he was onto something with the concept of projection. Yeah, I think that projection is... Now look, I don't know that much about psychology, so don't quote me here. But as far as I know, projection is actually still one of those things that's like reasonably well supported in like modern psychology.
It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's one of many.
Right.
And people do it. I do it. I mean, people do it, right?
Yep.
But recognize it and don't use it as a logical argument, because it is not logical.
No. Yep. So, here we go.
Said better statistics in more recent years have supported the existence of the Oort Cloud and put it at a distance of 50,000 astronomical units. Now, this would be a quiz question. What is an astronomical unit?
Wait, hold on. All right. Anyone put it in the chat. And while you're working on that, Bent, we were working on a way to do some Steam key giveaways.
Okay.
So I'm going to go over, while people are putting in their chat, what they think an astronomical unit is. Let's go ahead and ask the question. So what we are thinking about doing is maybe not this week, but maybe in the next few weeks, we might do a Steam key giveaway. So what we're thinking is everyone who super chats or comments, so no purchase necessary, you can just leave a comment, that's fine, will be entered into a random drawing to receive a Steam key, because Bent has a fair few Steam keys for, these are relatively inexpensive, games, so don't get, we're talking like, what, $5, $10 at most?
One says it's a $13 value.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. 13, maybe.
But most don't even say.
Okay, so like don't spend like $50 on your chance to get like a $5 game or anything. But so we were thinking about doing that, and the deal would be for comments, it has to be a unique, like an original comment. Like if replies don't count on comments, but each super chat would get you a point or an entry. And each comment, and there would be like a time limit, like in the first 3 days or so for comments. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, say that later. But here we go. Let's get some.
Oh, wait, I have a question. Are these live chat comments or post video?
These would be comments on the video.
Okay.
I can't just do every live chat comment.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's see. We've got Robert Adset, who says Earth-Sun distance. Jonathan H. AU equals average distance from the Sun to the Earth. Bruce Smith says distance from Earth to Sun. Tyler West says the distance between Earth and the Sun. Justin Archosaur says, I don't know, a meter, but it's in space. The Venerable Bede asks how late he is. You're almost an hour and a half late, sorry. Yeah, so there you go. So yeah, you guys are right that an AU is basically the mean distance between the Earth and the Sun. And it's the center of those two bodies, not the surfaces, which isn't super significant, but it's a thing.
Is the distance from the Sun to the Earth. If you're going to measure the distance in space, you need a bigger ruler. You don't want to say it's 474 zillion inches, between these planets. You need a bigger unit of measure. So the distance from Earth to the Sun is 93 million miles, roughly. That is called 1 astronomical unit.
Yeah,
now,
basically.
We have how many planets in our solar system? 9. Does anybody know the acrostic to memorize the names of them?
I guess it was 9 when he did this, so that's fine.
My very extravagant mother just sent us 90 parakeets. Which would be dumb to do, but what it means is Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto.
I prefer 9 pizzas because I would much rather have 9 pizzas than 90 parakeets.
I would do 90 and not 9.
Yeah, that's crazy. Plus, pizza is way better than parakeets for most things. Parakeets are loud and kind of annoying.
I prefer 90 pizzas.
What would you do with 90 pizzas? I mean, you'd eat like, what, 2 maybe?
I'd eat a lot of it, and then I'd freeze the rest. And then I'd have really bad heartburn.
You couldn't fit 90 pizzas in your freezer. Either of them. Eat both of them. Am I wrong?
I'll refrigerate some. I'll eat a lot of pizza.
Okay. Well, tell you what, guys. Send me enough of 90 pizzas right now in Super Chats, and we'll buy Beethoven 90 pizzas.
And that would also qualify for another Hoven pink tutu, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. I would probably qualify for both of us wearing pink tutus.
Yeah.
Pluto is the farthest one out.
What about, was it Sedna? What about Sedna, Kent?
Is 39 astronomical units away. You cannot see Pluto without an extremely good telescope. He is saying these comets are 50,000 astronomical units away. Now, tell me, do you think he's ever seen those things?
No.
I don't think so, right?
Oh
yeah, because they were predicted based on the math of how far out long period comets go.
No one said that he said he could see them, you idiot. And that is the first time I've done a name call, and I apologize for it. But my goodness, you have to be idiotic to think that.
Yeah. So the thing is, the reason he calculates this is because if you look at long period comets and you measure their orbits, which Kent thinks can't be done apparently, you tend to get aphelions around that distance. So if you get a whole bunch of comets that all have an aphelion around 50,000 AU, it only makes sense to propose that there's a source of them at about that distance, which is what was actually done by Jan, not Jan, Oort.
Here's what they say about the comets, because you're going to have to face this, Eric, when you get out there speaking. Somebody's going to say this Oort Cloud is where they're coming from. Well, Earth to Sun is 1 astronomical unit. He's claiming this is 50,000 astronomical units away.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all that it's far away, Kent.
But big number. Ooh.
Okay, so what if it's not there? Like, what is out there? Even if it's just empty space, right? Like, it's still a place in space that exists. Why couldn't there be an Oort Cloud there? Why is it impossible just because it's so far away?
Don't know.
What would the force of gravity be, considering the inverse square law?
It doesn't matter how small it would be. All that matters is that the sun is still the largest local source. That's it. It doesn't even have to be the largest local source. It just has to be the dominant source overall.
Kent finds these complete non-issues with reality and thinks it's evidence against it.
Yeah, I don't even know.
It's baffling.
How much pull does the sun have on these comets? Real close to 0, right?
No, but not 0, Kent? Yeah, okay, not 0. Got it.
It's not real close to 0
not much,
because
right?
then they fly off.
Well, even if it were close to 0, as long as it's non-zero, then they're attracted to the sun and they can orbit it at some speed. As long as the net gravity from the sun is positive.
I haven't done the math, but if these things are that far out, how fast do you think they're moving around the sun?
Pretty slowly.
They do have a lot of distance to cover, but they're not moving very quickly.
No.
Now, no one has ever seen the Oort Cloud, of course. This is all theoretical. Oort never saw the Oort Cloud. He made it up. He hoped it happened. He thought it might be there, but he does not know that for sure. Now, Oort proposed this in the 1950s. That's what Madsen said. In 1974, there was an article in Astrophysics and Space Science magazine, volume 31, that said, Oort proposed a cloud of comets surrounding the solar system based on mathematical errors. What that means is...
Yeah, okay, in 1974 someone thought he got the math wrong, but it's... When you made this, to be fair, it was like 14 years ago or something. But we've been checking the math since then, and we still think there's an Oort Cloud.
There is no Oort Cloud.
False.
It doesn't exist.
False.
But the rest of Madsen's answer is typical of the scoffers. He said, sorry, fellas, if you want... He's talking about me. If you want to use the comet argument, it's up to you to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the Oort Cloud and other sources don't exist. Now think about what he's saying there.
Yeah, he's telling you to rebut the evidence.
If I want to use the...
Yeah.
It's what you would do to try and disprove a scientific paper. He's literally asking you to practice science.
Yep. Because what's already happened is...
Now think about that, Kent.
Because what's already happened is we've had numerous observations of long-period comets which put their aphelion, which is the farthest they get from the sun, at a consistent range of distances, which indicate that many of them originate from the same place. So, if you want to say that that's impossible, that can't happen, that isn't a good explanation for why long-period comets exist, then you're going to have to actually show why that's inconsistent with the data. Because we already know it is consistent with the data as far as we can tell. You want to change that consensus? Great. Do the work. Take the measurements, do the math. You don't even have to take new measurements, actually. You can just go back to previous measurements and show why they're inconsistent with this conclusion. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, show it. Show why. Show the math.
You know, for a teacher of math...
Teach a lot of people.
He claims to have been a math teacher. You ever think he wrote on a student's homework, show your work? Because I got that on a lot of my math homework.
Yeah, I did too, but maybe he didn't do that.
Yeah? Because it seems like he is loath to show his work. So maybe he just never wrote that on a kid's homework.
Silver Harlow asks, why does he care about disproving comets?
Because if comets have a good explanation as to how they can exist in a old solar system, then it's one less feather in his cap of young Earthism. Because
I don't know if he's actually said it or not yet, or has it been said out loud, but essentially, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I very well could be, is that if these comets take a
drink from Mothra.
Comets are 10,000 years, how are we getting them? And there's interactions in the Oort Cloud that knocks them into low. Could be wrong on that?
That is his argument, except he's also now talking about long period comets, for which there's a different argument, but he hasn't bothered to change the argument any. So he's making that argument while also conflating short and long period comets.
And I am not an expert at all on short and long period comets. I don't want to act like I am, but I just want to make sure that I'm not getting things wrong. So.
Comet argument as evidence the solar system is young, I have to prove the Oort Cloud doesn't exist.
You don't have to prove it, you just have to make it seem less likely than that it does exist. If you did that, that's all it would take.
Like, you at least try to do that.
Yeah. Like if you could get a rigorous study where your null hypothesis is the Oort Cloud does exist, it's your null, and you get a p-value that disconfirms the null hypothesis of well, let's just go to an r-squared value because it's easier to think of those. R-squared is more or less basically your chance of statistics is dumb. Look, there's things you can do with p-values and r-values and r-squared values to come up with basically what's the chance that your results are just because of chance and not because of an actual hypothesis being true. If you could show that the Oort Cloud hypothesis is likely to be true at less than 50%, that would be pretty good. You would have made a pretty good start to saying, hey, we can't explain reliably where long period comets, I can't talk, come from in terms of the Oort Cloud. That's no longer a viable hypothesis. That's all it takes. So yeah, just do that, Kent. And sorry, look, I'm a little bit too far into it to talk about p-values and things like that. Because my goodness, did I not enjoy my statistics class.
I didn't even take a statistics class, but I had to do some statistics in other classes, and we'd get a real quick crash course on it, and then I would be in groups with people who had better practice with that.
I'm slightly jealous because, my goodness, I did not enjoy statistics.
Well, but see, now I don't really remember how to do a lot of the stuff I did because I really only did a handful of times. But the thing is you can learn how to do. One can learn how to do this and do it, and acts as if there's no conceivable way to do it. Like he doesn't even understand that people can do that. Now, I don't know if that's how he thinks, but the way he acts, it's like he doesn't realize he can actually do that work.
Yeah, he could just go out and do it. But the thing is, I think somewhere deep down he knows that if he did, it wouldn't come out the way he wants it to.
Yeah.
Well, you tell me, how could you prove the non-existence of anything?
Okay, so if I said that there were an elephant in the garage, and you wanted to demonstrate to a high level of confidence that that was incorrect, you could do things like go into the garage and note the extreme lack of evidence for an elephant. Whereas if there were an elephant in the garage, you would expect to see evidence like, I don't know, seeing an elephant, right? So can you prove a negative? Usually you can't. However, some things would leave expected evidence, and the absence of such evidence is in fact indication of the absence of the thing. So for instance, if you said, hey, there is a star at a certain point in the sky, and I look at that point and don't see any light, that's good evidence there is no star at that point. Is it proof? I guess not. No, maybe there's something blocking it. I don't know. But it's pretty good evidence. So yes, you can provide evidence for the non-existence of the Oort Cloud by saying, here is what we should expect if there is an Oort Cloud. We do not see that thing, therefore there probably is no Oort Cloud. Is it proof? No. Does it lower our confidence in the Oort Cloud? Yes. Would you be required to do that to make your argument work? Yes.
Doesn't he prove the non-existence of God? You can't prove the non-existence of anything. And I tell folks, look, if he wants to use my tax dollars to teach all the kids in school the Earth is billions of years old, it's up to him to prove it does exist.
We get it.
This is a typical tactic the scoffers use.
Tax dollars, we get it, Ken.
Yeah.
Use often. They try to shift the burden of proof on you. No, the burden of proof's on him.
No.
Okay, well, the evidence is out there, and he probably wrote about it in his book that you're ignoring. So
science has generally met the burden of proof. The burden of proof for the age of the universe, the age of the Earth, source of comets, biological or evolution, all of these have been met. Now that you want to overturn them, Kent, you have a new burden of proof. You have to overcome the level of evidence provided by the proponents of science and show why your pseudoscientific nonsense is actually better science. You have failed to do that at every turn in your entire life, but hey, whatever.
Here's the facts. We do have comets.
Yep, true.
They don't last long.
Take a drink, too.
10,000 years seems to be a reasonable estimate for the
short period.
Maximum life expectancy of a short period comet.
Yep.
We still have short period comets.
Take a drink.
We know they don't last long. They certainly don't last forever. You can't just keep losing material. And the Bible teaches the Earth is 6,000 years old. Now that all...
I would disagree. I don't think the Bible actually teaches that. I think you interpret it to say that. But I don't think any of the people writing the Bible, nor most of the people reading it, come away with it intending to teach an age for the Earth.
Fits together just fine. So he's got the problem, not me. You will find, Eric, if you listen carefully when they make statements...
He's not literally like, no, but it's what he's doing.
Basically.
When they ask you questions, the problem, the solution is in their question, the way they're asking it. Like, don't you believe in evolution? What do you mean by evolution? Well, things change. Well, yeah. Things change.
No one's saying, well, things... Well, okay, I know maybe one person who might say, well, things change. But generally speaking, when people ask you in the context of a scientific discussion, do you believe in evolution? They're talking about biological evolution. They're not talking about stellar formation. They're not talking about nucleosynthesis. They're not talking about change in fashion styles.
Are the changes ever positive?
What?
Does the change ever add more genetic information?
Yes. Every duplication event adds genetic information to that particular genome, and every mutation overall adds new alleles, at least, which means that it increases the information of the population's genetic variation overall. The fact that you haven't well-defined information doesn't let you get away with saying that mutations never increase information. They absolutely do. And take a drink for Mothra. Thank you, Queen of the Monsters. Oh, and again. Yeah, the Venerable Bee points out that Kent is sort of a sovereign citizen. He rejects that label, but then he did file a lawsuit against his son Eric in a sovereign citizen court, so, you know.
Never seen that. Does the change ever change it to a different kind of animal? We'll get into more of that later, of how they, when I got a debate tomorrow night, Saturday night in, wherever I'm going, Wisconsin. And you just, if you listen to what they're saying carefully.
You have, and also drink again from Mothra, apparently.
Okay, but give me some time here.
Okay.
You can pick out, after a little experience doing this, you can pick out exactly what to respond to that. But this guy is saying, it's our job to prove the Oort Cloud doesn't exist.
Yes, because it's been demonstrated to a high degree of confidence that it likely does exist. So if you want to overturn that consensus, you have to show why that conclusion is flawed.
This, of course, is ridiculous. This wouldn't hold up 2 seconds in a court of law.
It would, Ken. It's sort of like saying, hey, look, we don't currently have...
Actually, I think the law would be, they'd throw it out and they'd tell Kent not to bring these ridiculous things to court again.
Basically.
It has nothing to do with the law.
So it's sort of like this. Let's say that we found a murder victim, right? And so, Mothra. So, the Venerable Bee, did Mothra die in the last Godzilla movie? Yeah, Mothra dies at the end of almost every movie she's in. That's sort of her thing. Mothra. So, all right. So you have a murder victim, right? The forensics guys come in and they say, okay, look, it looks like this person was killed by blunt force trauma from a hammer, was with a head that was flat, and it was, this diameter across. That's a somewhat unusual diameter for a hammer. So, okay. Then we look at, say, credit card records at the local hardware stores, and we see that one guy who had means and motive and opportunity bought such a hammer 3 weeks ago. But when the cops search his house, they don't find the hammer. So Ken says, well, sure, he might have had such a hammer, and maybe that was the kind of hammer that killed it, and maybe he's the only suspect, but until you produce the hammer, no. And that's essentially the argument that we're going with here. We know short period comets exist, as do long period comets. We know that there's mathematically good ways that long period comets can turn into short period comets after gravitational interactions. So that works out. And we know, based on the calculated aphelion of many long period comets, that they tend to originate from a particular distance. We can tell based on their orbital inclinations that it's probably not a flat disk, it's probably a sphere. And put all that together, and even though you don't have direct observations of the Oort Cloud per se, you have everything you need to conclude that it almost certainly exists. And if you want to say it doesn't explain the existence of long and short period comets, you have to show why it's no longer inconsistent with the data. Because it's extremely consistent with the data. We'll hit play again.
Some freshman lawyer would pick that one apart. Yes, sir.
I think the Earth is 6,000 years old. Now, how old do you think the universe is? The same age?
I think the whole universe is 6,000 years. Because Exodus 20 in the Ten Commandments, God wrote on a rock with his own finger and said, in 6 days, the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. Well, if he made it all in 6 days, that would include everything. Heaven, earth, everything. Made in 6 days. So, from Scripture, it's very certain that everything was made at the same time. There's no question there. Also, when we look at the evidence from space that we observe, there's no reason to say it's more than billions of years, more than 6,000 years old. No reason to say it.
Wait, sorry, what was that?
That doesn't tell you 6,000 years, Kent.
No, it doesn't. But also, I want to point out that he says everything we can see in space, there's no reason to think the universe is more than 6,000 years old. Yes, there is. The existence of anything more than 6,000 light years away is proof positive that the universe is not 6,000 or less or fewer years old. It is proof positive that it is more than that. The fact is, we can see things 13 billion light years away, not 6,000 light years away. I mean, obviously we can see things closer than that too, but yeah. So, yes, just looking at the night sky, well, okay, not just looking at it, but measuring things like parallax, then finding standard candles and whatnot, you can know for certain, based on astronomy, that the universe is not 6,000 years old. It is impossible unless you want to posit a god that lies to you. There you go.
It's billions of years old. The comets don't say that. The star galaxies don't say that.
I will agree. Comets do not require the universe or the solar system to be billions of years old. Fair enough, Kent. It's a ridiculously minor point, but I'll drink because you technically got that right. The existence of comets does not demonstrate the age of the solar system.
They just all indicate, look, a few thousand years is all we need. Psalm chapter 19. The heavens.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick drink. Kent, there is no such thing as Psalms chapter 19. There is Psalm 19. I'm going to take a drink from Mothra. The book of Psalms is a collection of individual psalms. Each one is a psalm because it's its own poem and or song. It doesn't have chapters, it has psalms. That is the 19th psalm in the book of Psalms. And the fact that you can't even cite the Bible correctly really annoys me. Like, this is basic, did you go to church as a kid crap. Hit play.
He takes it literally true, even though he doesn't even understand that.
He can't even get the Bible right. It's like when Trump said his favorite book of the Bible was like 2 Corinthians or some crap like that. And I'm just like, and I actually asked like an evangelical Protestant friend of mine, I'm like, you think this guy is like a big, Bible believing Christian?
You asked me that, and I was like, that? I laughed. I remember you asked me. The thing is, for a while, because no one talks like that.
I know someone who defended it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's just like, I just can't anymore.
They say that's how they say it?
She said, oh, I've heard people say it like that. I'm like, no, you haven't.
Hoven, or not.
Yeah, Trump. All right, let me take a drink for Mothra. Anyway, here we go.
Notice it's plural. We'll get into that later. Why is it plural? There is more than one heaven. There are 3 heavens mentioned in the Bible. The heavens declare the glory of God. And the
Psalms 19:1.
Wait, say that again, sorry.
What does that say in the bottom? Psalms 19:1?
Yeah, that is exactly how you pronounce that. But also, it should just be Psalms 19, that could work, but it should really be Psalm 19.
The psalmist said, when I consider thy heavens, not if.
Oh, not what? If. He said when. None of those other words there matter at all, by the way.
I want to hear what he thinks the importance of the dichotomy, that dichotomy is.
Now, we've got a real problem in this generation because we got a lot of kids that don't take time to consider the heavens. I tell them, you ought to shut off the TV, shut off the VCR once in a while, and go out.
Yeah, guys, shut off your VCRs. I'm sure all of you have VCRs. Shut them all off.
And consider the heavens.
Look, I get it. I can't really legitimately criticize him for this being an old video, but even when this was made, VCRs were on the way out, though. I just do want to point that out.
Even then, it doesn't matter. Like, that's not his point.
I know.
Go out.
It is still funny, though. It's like, what's next, Ken? Should we put down our Ataris?
2 Corinthians is my favorite Bible verse.
I remember as a kid, we used to lay out in the yard and look at the clouds and try to see designs in the clouds, No,
you tried to trick your brain into recognizing shapes. There were no patterns.
See the ships or whatever, And my dad would teach us and Mom would teach us the different kinds of clouds. And what does this mean? When you see the cirrus clouds, that means there's probably going to be a front coming through. Probably in a few days, you'll have a rain. And you can actually... And Jesus talked about the Pharisees, how they were able to discern the face of the sky. When it's red and lowering, you have a certain kind of weather. But we need to really take time to consider the heavens. He said, when I consider thy heavens. Psalm 39 said, what?
All right, look, we're going to close it up here. I'm tired of Kent rambling about this. So, let's see. Thursday should probably be a Jungle Jargon video. I'm working on new creatures for Speculative Evolution. I also have 2 scripts for new scripted videos. I don't know if anything's happening. Oh, actually, no, I do know something's happening Saturday. I'm going to be speaking on the Great Debate Community channel to a Muslim apologist called Finding Truth. We're going to be talking about whether or not natural selection, mutations, basically whether selection and mutations are sufficient to explain biodiversity. So I don't remember what time it is, but that will be on the 20th. I'll post a community link about our community post about that. Let's see. Hopefully next week we're going to finalize the details for a giveaway. You can get a free Steam key. We'll announce like the rules for that at the beginning of Kent with Bent if we do it that week. I think that's really it. Bent, what do you have?
I think there's a website called coppermagma.com.
Absolutely. Go there. You get free music. Free
music. There's progress being made still for recording, and then the other band I'm in wants to try and record. We're basically ready for 2 or 3 songs.
Nice. So look forward to new music there. And of course, Copper Magma is the band that has performed the music that you hear at the outro to most of my videos now. But yeah, with that, I want to say a special thank you to everyone who's watching, but also especially to everyone who super chatted, including Ian Chen, Sphincter of Doom, Man Cyborg, Tiktaalik, and Jonathan H. So thank you very much, and here is my end credit video. I'd like to just take a moment to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above: Ben Hovind, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, and the Venerable Bede. My channel members and patrons help make this a much more stable income, because as you might know, ad income varies wildly from month to month, even with the same number of views. And it really helps this channel stay on the air. But if a monthly pledge, or a yearly pledge, which I have now activated, isn't right for you, there's a merch store linked in the description, and every like, share, and subscription really helps the channel grow. Also, starting this month, those pledging $10 or above will have access to free 3D art assets, including materials and models, which will be made for Blender by me and can be used in any project without crediting me